And Tara Babb, what would be your recommendation for some stress relief?
Well, I would say that a lot of the things that have already been said, I definitely do those things. But one thing that if I can't get away from my kids, if my husband isn't home or I just can't get a break from them, a lot of times we'll just stop what we're doing and we'll turn on music and we will dance and sing. And a lot of times that's super helpful just to kind of let it go. And they all like to sing and dance too. So that's a good break for them.
And there's a song called Let It Go. I'm guessing you moved to that one too.
Right.
So find a buddy, get moving, take a walk, be present, be creative, use the arts to help you relieve that stress. All great advice. Let's go back to Jamie as a child psychologist. I'm sure many people would appreciate hearing from you as they observe their children. If they see signs of anxiety in their children, especially because of the COVID-19 crisis, what would you recommend?
Thanks, Perry. I've seen some of this in my sessions with patients, and I think the most important thing for parents to understand is some level of anxiety related to this is normal. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find any adult who hasn't felt heightened stress, sleepless night, turning to social media to kind of get reassurance. So those are our signs of stress. And so it's not abnormal. It's not a disorder if a child is experiencing anxiety related to this. And then another thing that I think is important is for parents to not be dismissive. So dismissive is a parenting style that's usually well-intentioned, and we have all done it. But it's when we say, you don't need to worry about that. You're fine, you're safe. And that's our kind of cut and dry answer. That doesn't really help an anxious child, nor does it give them that opportunity to practice like talking about emotions and emotional control and emotional identification. So the best thing to do at first is to empathize and listen. And a really great way to find out what the actual worry is, because sometimes it's their behavior. They're not saying, I feel scared because. And so some questions that are really helpful are, what's the bad thing you think is going to happen? Okay. And so that gets at what the worry thought is. And that's what anxiety is. It's the fear of a bad thing happening. And so what's the bad thing you think is going to happen? Or what is the worry saying to you? So I'll have kids pretend the worry is like outside of them. And so what's the worry saying to you? So then when your child gives you that, it gives you insight into the specific thing they're worried about, because you don't know. We assume they're worried about the virus. They might be worried about the food shortages at the grocery store they've heard about. So you could be talking to them about the virus and they're thinking, that's not what I'm worried about. And so what's the bad thing you think is going to happen? And then you get that great worry thought from them. And after that, I think you educate. And so a lot of my patients have found it really helpful to go through with their parent and I and talk about what flatten the curve actually means. And so because kids are taking their cues from their social environment, and right now, every social cue is really scary. There's people in masks, school shut down, restaurants are closed, my parents aren't working. If we're taking cues, those are all things that say we must be in danger. And so explaining what flatten the curve means and how it's not necessarily that everyone who gets this virus dies or even has to go to the hospital, but flatten the curve is more about helping the healthcare system. And so when we talk about that, that reduces anxiety and it gives them truth, because anxiety is usually an exaggeration or a lie, and so it gives them a bit of truth. And so other things that could be truth would be like, we're taking precautions at home, or if they're worried about food, the manufacturers have not stopped producing food. And so then they have these like nuggets of truth or logic, and that is what you use to kind of boss worry back. So then that third step would just be empower them to use the truth. So even write it down. And so it's right there for them to see. because you don't want your child to consistently rely on you for that reassurance. Tell me again that we're safe. You want them to be the ones that boss their worry back. And so, and then once they've bossed their worry back with the truth, get them busy doing something else. So something active, something that's very engaging to them, something that they're sensitive, and then they can sort of distract themselves.
Wonderful advice. Thanks, Jamie. And I want to remind people who are watching on Facebook that you're welcome to ask our experts questions. So feel free to pop your question into the comments. And I'm going to ask Tara Evans now. She's an experienced homeschool teacher, and I think, Tara, many people have been suddenly thrust into the role of teaching at home, and that has been a huge source of stress. So what tips would you have for parents who have suddenly become homeschool teachers?
So there's a lot of things that I could say. The first is I want to just encourage you to have so much grace for yourself and for your kids. This is such a traumatic time. Even though we are just asked to stay home and watch Netflix, it's different and it's strange. And don't be so hard on your kids, and don't be so hard on yourself. Like, there are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days, and that's okay. And then the other thing I would say is don't try to recreate the school environment at home. Like that, don't take the classroom and try to redo it in your kitchen or wherever you do your schoolwork, because it's not going to be the same. And so you're going to be trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. And that it's not going to work. It's going to be stressful. So try to think outside of the box and think about how your child learns and what you can do to kind of, I know you haven't picked your own curriculum. As a homeschooler, I have a huge advantage that I got to pick what I'm teaching my kids. You guys, you parents are having to teach what the teachers are telling you to teach, and that's hard. So however you can kind of mold and manipulate that to how your child learns best, I would really encourage that as much as possible. And then the other thing, and I think maybe Tara Babb can speak more to this, but I'm hearing from a lot of friends that they're spending like 5 and 6 and 7 hours schooling their children during the day. I'm not an expert in that. We don't spend that much time schooling. So maybe Tara can have some more to say about that, but I don't think that's normal. So I would encourage Tara to talk about that, because like many of my friends are talking about having to teach and sit with their children for that long. And like, you should not be at the kitchen table for 6 hours. You shouldn't be there, and your child shouldn't be there for 6 hours. So take lots of breaks and have lots of grace for yourself and for your kids.
Thanks, Tara. Let's turn to Tara Babb now, who's a master teacher with the EVSC. What are your thoughts about how parents should approach this teaching job that they now have?
I will piggyback off what Tara Evans said about not sitting at the table for hours and hours on end. We don't do that in the regular school day. We give kids a lot of, at the max 20 minutes where they're getting a lesson, but then it's a lot of it is about collaborating with other students and learning from each other, which you don't have that right now to be able to do. So although our school day is a 6 to 7 hour school day, that's not realistic to be sitting at the table. Even they have specific guidelines around how long like your kindergartner and first grader should be sitting. And I think it's like 30 minutes at max doing that kind of work. So definitely I would encourage you not to spend all of your time, trying to recreate that classroom environment, because it's just not possible. The other thing and I'm going to piggyback off of what Jamie said as well. The most important thing is to focus on your family's mental health during this time. It is a crazy time, and I know parents, and I've had a lot of friends say to me, I just feel like I'm worried about my student falling behind. I'm worried about my student not learning things. I've had parents ask me, will my student have to be retained, held back to the same grade level? And the answers to all of that is no. Our teachers are skilled. That's what we do in meeting students where they are. We do that on a normal basis. If we get students that have holes in their learning or they are below the grade level, we're skilled in trying to kind of finding where they're at and growing them to where they need to be. So I feel like that's definitely a worry, that if you're someone right now that is worrying about that, take that off of your plate, because next year, school teachers will be able to close those gaps. But I also feel like it's important to reach out to your child's teacher or the school when you need support. That's what they're there for. That's what they're being asked to do. I know our teachers at our school are really trying to make weekly contacts with each of the families to support and to connect with students. So if you are feeling overwhelmed or you're confused, just reach out to the teacher or to the school and make sure that you have them, that they're there to offer that support. So I would definitely take them up on it.
Thank you, Tara. Nobody should feel like a failure as a teacher, because that's not really what you are. You are still a parent. That's your number one job.
Right.
So we do have a question from one of our Facebook viewers, and I'll ask Tiffany to answer this question. If others want to chime in after that, please do. So Tiffany, this person shares that they're struggling with the questions that their kids are asking. The person says, I'm not sure and I don't know, I don't want them to feel more worried like I am. So how would you respond to a child's worry or the questions that they have?
Okay, so first of all, you will want to validate their feelings, okay? So if they're coming to you with, questions of worry or, showing those stress signs, just talking to them and letting them know that, that you're there for them and that you understand why they would feel that way. A lot of times as parents, we are stressed as well. And so that goes back to even our own individual self-care, making sure that we are taking care of ourselves, reaching out to a buddy, maybe doing those things so we can be more in that mindset to talk to our children, and just let them know with everything that they're providing, that they're giving you, just letting them know that you understand and just listen, because a lot of times we want to answer the question maybe based off of what we think they're asking, but listening to the actual question and just giving them comfort. I think that's the biggest thing. If they feel comfortable asking the question, just try to be, meet them where they are, and just help them get through it.
Thank you, Tiffany. Jamie, did you want to add something? I'm sorry, I was just.
Sure. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. No, I think that's great. And looking for the logic, looking for the truth. And I don't know if this was a mom or a dad, but to having someone that you can talk to about your stress and anxiety is huge. Not necessarily a therapist, but even just being able to have those conversations privately away from your child to kind of address some of your worries, and maybe making sure that you're not getting too much input from, I feel like we're in information overload right now. And when you go down a rabbit hole on the internet or social media, adults can get themselves pretty worked up. So make sure you're putting those things aside and making time for self-care, but definitely listening to what your child's true worry is, and don't fear that talking about it in brief, moments. Don't fear that talking about it's going to make it worse. validating it, and then get busy doing something else.
Thank you for that advice. As I know it's possible to overdose on news, so we don't want to consume too much news and get lost in that. And as we've already talked about, being present is so important. Betsy, we have another question from someone watching on Facebook, and I think you're a good one to take it as special education coordinator, the EVSC. This person asks about pointers for parents working with a child with hearing loss, and this child has an IEP. So I'm sure that's especially stressful for parents who have children with special needs.
I may unmute. Absolutely. That, you know, typically in a school day where we would be in the building, we would have interpreters that could do sign language, or if it's not as a severe hearing loss, you know, because it's a spectrum with hearing losses as well, we might have people who can be peer helpers with them. So, but when they're in the home and they don't have those tools, sometimes teachers wear like microphones that help amplify the sound in the classroom, and that can be difficult when those tools aren't there in the home. So one of the things that all of our, what we call our teacher of records, who would be the person who would be your go-to person for that child, has been reaching out to all of our list and been talking with those parents and helping them and finding little holes of where we can best meet our kids' needs. You know, especially if it's a student that I'm not for sure if they use sign, or if that's, you know, what they have for their mode of communication. But, you know, our school platform uses what we call WebEx, and parents can, you know, download the app, and it can go through a phone. It can go through, if it's an older kid and they have a Chromebook, you know, it can be on there. So we have a lot of ways that we're still able to be, you know, in a virtual world, though, face-to-face with our kids. So my advice there would be to contact, you know, that teacher of record and make sure that they've exhausted all the efforts to be able to help with that communication, because absolutely it is a barrier. I was speaking about that earlier with some people of just communicating and getting through normally sometimes is difficult, but then adding the virtual world to it adds another layer of difficulty.
Thank you. So a few more questions, and we certainly, again, welcome questions from our friends watching on Facebook. But I'll follow up again with you, Betsy. What is the EVSC doing to support children of special needs?
We have rolled out so many tools and things, and the teams that have done them, I've been just blown away each time. But like our speech therapists and our occupational therapists and our physical therapist teams who see kids, and those are roles that they really need to be with the kids, but they didn't want to just say we can't be with them, so we're just gonna wash our hands. They have made sites, weekly sites with videos and tutorials, and pushing out weekly work for the parents that is actually really, really fun, but still working on their fine motor needs. And the speech therapists have sent, you know, activities for the parents to do, talk them through, and they've made it very easy too for the parents to really say, this is what my kid needs, this is where they're at, and then where to find the information. It's on all of our school websites, so if you would go to your school and then go to the virtual learning tabs, you'll see those links on there. So those are some of our our related services, but then all of our teams have a coordinator like me over a district, and then we're having weekly team meetings with our teachers that are the special ed teachers in those buildings, and, you know, and asking them, who have you not been able to contact, who have you contacted? Have you been able to help? I just got a text last night from one of my teachers that said, a parent, I said, hey, how are things going? And the parent responded back. She was like, well, if I'm going to be honest, I'm really struggling with these Google Docs. And she said it was great because she was able to then just call the parent, They talked through it. They went through some stuff. They then even got the kid on a WebEx meeting with her, and then they talked through some things. I have several other teachers in the schools that I work with that are doing that as well. Recording themselves as they're reading a section, because that's an accommodation that a lot of our kiddos have, is something might be read aloud to them. So they're taking the work that's been given from maybe their general teacher for like an English, or a math class or something, and then they're reading it and putting the audio out to the students. So they're still meeting the kids' needs. It's just in some more unique ways, but they're learning, and I'm seeing it getting more creative every single week. Or every single day, it gets a little more, the technology, the teachers are getting more used to it and they're figuring it out. But something that our special ed teachers are doing even more is just making sure that our kids' social emotional needs are being met, because we know that so many of our kids have a goal like that on their IEP. And so we're checking in with them, and we're using the terminology that we would use in school. We're asking them, where's your zone? How are you feeling? And our kids know that. So then communicating with the parents and helping them understand that when a kid says they're in the green, that means they're good. They're doing really good, and they feel confident and they feel ready to learn. Even using words like that, ready to learn, mom, dad, or I need a break. I had my child say that to me today after some math, I need a break. Okay. But our teachers are just wanting to make sure that they know that they have that the parents have an outlet. I had another teacher of record text me right before dinner and said that a mom just needed to talk, and they talked for about 20 minutes on the phone. And during that 20 minutes, they were able to talk about some of the struggles that her son was having. And then the teacher was able to offer some advice of things that she saw worked in the classroom. And then mom was able to mimic some of that stuff at home.
I think I'm hearing you say, don't be afraid to ask for help, because there are people ready and willing, right?
Yeah, we're making, phone calls all the time, emails as much as possible. And just don't be afraid you're going to overwhelm a teacher or a teacher of record or a special ed teacher or anyone, because they're wanting to let people know that it's fine. We got an email from my daughter's teacher today for a lesson, a platform they use called IXL. And she said she had noticed that some of the kids were spending more than 20 minutes on it. And she said, let them know that they don't have to finish it. If you get to the 20 minutes, it's good. So don't be nervous that I hear people say, well, I don't want to be that parent, or I don't want to be that, that's filling up the teacher's email or calling them. That's not a worry at this time. We're there, we want to support, and we're happy to support.
And Tara, Bab, did you want to add something else to what Betsy was sharing?
Yes, sure. One thing that she made me think of that went along with one of the questions that what can parents do to help students that are stressed or that are worrying and feeling all of this, just this craziness, is just that they are trained in EVSC. We talk a lot about social emotional learning, and students have the skills to be able to use those at home. So one tip that I would strongly encourage you to do is ask your student, what do you do at school when you feel stressed? Because I guarantee you they're going to have some type of thing, my teacher tells me to do this, or I know to do this because I learned this. So that's one big thing that I feel like you can't use enough. You just continue to ask, when you're feeling stressed at school, what is it that you do at school? And I think that would be helpful at home as well.
That's great. One of the things we talk about in my organization is silver linings. And there definitely have been some silver linings through this crisis. And perhaps one of them is parents have an even greater understanding of how school is promoting their social and emotional well-being, and learning some of the language that's being used, and can be able to transfer that to home, and everybody be on the same page, which would be a great silver lining.
Hey, Perry, I actually have a question for Betsy and Tara.
Please.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
So as a psychologist, but I have 2 children in the EVSC and 1, coming up. When my kids start to get dysregulated, I go into what I use with my patients, but does the EVSC have those social emotional learning like zones posted anywhere? Is there some place where I want to speak their language, and I don't want to introduce new vocabulary when they've already learned on their own? Is there a place that parents can get that information?
Well, I can share it, and then Tara can share it too. Our social emotional learning specialists have pushed out lessons as well. They've pushed out, and they're on the school websites. And then if you can't find it, don't try to stress out on a school website. Most of them are pretty easy to find, but right now, things that seem easy to find don't always appear to be easy because we've got so much other stress in our life. So if you're looking around on it and you're like, oh, I still can't find it, just email your teacher because they've got those lessons ready to push out as well. They've got them saved in folders that they can send. But also on the WNIN channel, they're doing lessons on there as well. Some of our sales specialists as well as counselors have been on. I saw the other day there was a yoga one that somebody could do and work through it. There was one the other day as well where someone was talking about the triangular breathing, which is something we do a lot, especially with our younger kiddos in the EVSC. It's just literally a picture of a triangle, but it talks them through the motions of, when do I inhale, when do I exhale? But those are on there. And I just would say again, if you can't find it on the school's website, then to email your teacher, your student's teacher, and ask because they have that. Like one of my daughter's teachers, she attaches it to the daily reminder of what is going on that day, but it is there.
Thank you.
And as Tara Babb said, have your child teach you.
And I would suggest just reaching out anyway, like Betsy said, to your child's teacher because the different grade levels have learned and focused on different pieces of the social emotional learning. And it's just like your regular curriculum where if you have a kindergartner, they may use a little bit different language than a third grader would. So I would suggest to reach out to your teacher and just ask if you can't find the lessons, what have they learned this year? What are some things that, like Betsy said, have been working with all of the students in the classroom? And then take that and try to integrate that into your home and let them teach you some of those things. And hopefully that'll help you with your own stress.
I forgot to mention too, this is even preschool kids. So if we have any parents out there whose kids are in the preschool level and they're in the EVSC, either at our Culver program or on an offsite program, those teachers are pushing out information to their parents as well. The itinerant special ed teacher, her name is Natalie Marsalek. She'd be so nervous if she knew I just said her name. But she's created a Facebook page for her parents and has been doing just some awesome things. I have a 4-year-old that's in preschool, so we just joined her preschool. We call it Miss Natalie's, and she actually did a story yesterday and then talked about the social emotional that she uses with her kids called Listening Larry. And it talks about how, his eyes are watching, his ears are hearing, his hands are in his lap. And like she had the picture of Larry and then she went over each and then she read a book to the kids online. So, she's created that so that she can still push, not only content, but that her kids can see her face. Her students can see that familiar person that they used to have, because that can, ease some anxiety in itself, just being able to see their teachers. So, but yeah, it's even preschool. I wanted to make sure that people knew that, pretty much across the board, they're wanting to get stuff out to still service our students.
Thank you. Tiffany, you are a Youth First social worker at Glenwood. Would you help people understand what Youth First social workers or any school social worker can do for students and families during this time?
Yes. As a social worker, we do a lot of resourcing. As families may think about maybe a need they may have or things may come up, They can reach out to the school, reach out, and typically the teachers tend to get a hold of me asking me to reach out to a family. As a social worker, I tend to do a lot of like the resourcing, any needs that may be need to be met as the family as a whole, as well as students if they're having some kind of anxiety or things like that. The social workers, counselors, or whoever is willing to even talk with the students and just kind of help them along. And like Ms. Betsy had just said, it does alleviate a certain level of stress, just hearing that familiar voice, or, you know, just some kind of familiar person speaking with them.
And it's really important, I think, for young people who have a caring relationship in school buildings to know that relationship still exists outside the school building. So I know you're staying connected with students who are you're mentoring in a way, and also what kind of resources are you seeing families needing, or are you seeing an increase in certain kinds of resources?
Yes, one of the increase that I've seen is applying for unemployment. That's been a big one. And if families don't have like access to internet or things like that, just trying to resource out. Either they're getting internet, or there's been times that I've sat on my internet and it's like, hey, you know, let me help you plug this in. You know, we're just willing to just do whatever to help our families and students as a whole.
So it is a time of increasing unemployment, perhaps increasing food insecurity,
Yes.
anxiety, all kinds of concerns that people have. And that's why we're gathered today, because all of you are also concerned about our community and our kids. So I'm very grateful for that. And I didn't know that social workers were not now IT specialists, but that's good to know too. Tara Evans, what are you seeing in your world? What are homeschool families talking about, and your kids talking about as we go through this crisis?
I think as a homeschool community are thankful that our lives have not changed that much. I've had a lot of friends that have said, oh, I get what you do now, and you're such a superhero for doing what, you know, being with your kids all day and teaching them. And let me tell you, what you parents are doing with your children is 1,000 times harder than what I do. I am not the superhero. You guys are the superheroes. You moms and dads who are having to work. And yeah, there's one of my kids. You parents who are still having to work, and you're having to lead your students in their education as well. Like I can't even make phone calls during the day. I can't imagine having to be on Zoom calls and be professional and not have kids be creepers in the background. So I just want to be a source of encouragement for parents who are in the trenches, because what you're doing is hard. But I think Tiffany said that, and Tara as well, like the family relationship is more important than the schoolwork, because your teachers are going to be able to fill in those gaps. And so if you are at a place in your day that there are tears and there are raised voices, it is okay to walk away from that. It is okay to say, no, we need a dance party right now. And maybe math doesn't get done today. But if you kind of bullnose through that and bulldoze, you know, we're going to get math done. Math has to get done today. And you've sacrificed your relationship with your child. I don't think that's a win. The relationship is more important.
Absolutely. Hey, Jamie, on that note, if parents are feeling exhausted and even frustrated with their child, what can they do to relieve that tension?
Sure. Tara Evans, I loved what you said. And I had a really wise coworker say who things at St. Vincent and in healthcare it's been really stressful. And she said, with my work and at home, I want to look back on this COVID-19, pandemic and be proud of how I handled things. And that's not going to happen every single time, but that has stuck with me when I'm in a tough spot with my kids. And even when I mess up and blow my top or whatever, just keeping in mind, I want to look back and be proud of how we came through this as a family, or a healthcare agency or what be it. Okay, Perry, so your question was
How to relieve some of the tension if you're feeling especially exhausted and frustrated with your children. Tara mentioned walking away, but what would be your recommendation for that kind of heightened exhaustion, frustration?
And I do therapy with mostly young kids, and so I'm always saying, but everything I work with kids on, totally, it's helpful to me as well when I find myself in those situations. Walk away from the scene of your anger. So when you think about what the scene of your anger is, if it's a computer program that you're working on with your student, walk away from the scene of your anger. If it's someone in your family, a sibling or whoever, walk away from the scene of your anger is huge. But then it can't stop there. You've got to do something with yourself, but walking away is absolutely the first step. So I feel like just some little strategies that I teach, and I'm sure Tiffany does too. I'm a big acronym person, and there are types of therapies that believe in acronyms. And so TIP, TIPP is, we teach acronyms so that you can be automatic with these things. So once I've walked away and I'm still fuming, if I can remember an acronym, I might be more likely to use it. So with TIP, it stands for temperature. And so that means change your temperature. And for some reason, when we change our temperature, it's a new sensory experience. And so it can change our emotion or get our mind off of our emotion for a second. And so things like, I like to wash my hands in warm water. That's like really soothing to me. Some people will say hold an ice cube. Some people will say splash cold water on your face, or if the temperature outside is different from inside, step outside. So changing your temperature. The I stands for intense exercise. And so that doesn't mean stop and do, 60 minutes of some intense exercise, but get your heart rate up quickly. So like jumping jacks or climb the stairs up and down quickly. And then another one is breathing, which Betsy talked about with triangle breathing. And there are many, many types. I like to have kids pick their favorite food and pretend to smell it and then cool it off. But doing some type of paced breathing where you're breathing in slowly and breathing out even longer. And then the last one is progressive muscle relaxation. So TIPP, progressive muscle relaxation is just a way to, when we're stressed, things happen to our muscles. And progressive muscle relaxation is kind of starting with the top and working your way down to like tighten, flex, and then relax those muscles. You may not have time to do all four of those things, but even doing one of them, having something to do with yourself when you successfully walk away is really helpful.
Thank you. We have another question from someone who's viewing us on Facebook. And this question, a parent is concerned about their students starting kindergarten in the fall. They say the test to see if they were ready for kindergarten was canceled. So they're wondering what they should be doing right now to get their incoming kindergartner ready for fall. And is there a test that the parent can give? Tara Babb, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. I actually have an incoming kindergartner in the fall that will start school as well. So in EVSC, we don't give an incoming entrance test to kindergarten. You just have to be 5 by August 1st. And so as far as resources for kindergarten and tests, I'm not really sure about that. However, there's multiple things that you could do at home with your child, starting with just reading. Read to them. They do not need to be able to read. That's definitely not something that you should be stressed out about. but just reading to them. If in whatever they're interested in, if they're interested in sitting down and learning to read and learning their letters and doing all of that stuff, then by no means, you should do those things with them for sure. But if they're not super interested in it, I definitely wouldn't push it. I know we have kindergartners that start at all ranges. Some students are reading just because that's something that they've always loved to do. And then some students don't know anything, and that's okay. Like I said, kind of going back before, teachers know how to fill those gaps, and those types of things that they need to know for kindergarten, they will learn that year. So I guess I'm just trying to say, whatever your child's interested in, I would definitely, colors, numbers, letters, letter sounds, those types of things. But the biggest thing is just reading to your child. I know, Betsy, you might have some other suggestions, or even, those of you that have little kids, you might have other things, but those are the things I can think of off the top of my head.
Anybody else want to chime in?
I thought everything Tara said spot on. Tara's son and my son, they're just a year apart, but they were in the same preschool. So and just knowing some of those developmental pathways, going with little ones who are going to go into kindergarten, the things that we always say we like to see in the kindergartners. I think the parents think that the kids, like Tara said, have to know how to read, write their name, count to 25, things like that. And we're like, no, we want them to be able to sit for a little bit, 3 to 5 minutes, be able to take an instruction. Those simple things you could do in your home. Like when they have dinner at night, instead of cleaning up their plate for them, ask them to go take their plate to the sink, because number one, they're helping you out. And number two, it's following a direction and it's a step. So you could even do a 2-step and say, we do that a lot in the schools, and we'll say, like, that's a lot of kids' IEP goals, is to be able to follow a 2-step suggestion or 2-step processes. So we might say something like, take your plate to the sink and then go put your pajamas on. So they're following those processes, which is things they're going to have to follow in a classroom as well. The only, as far as I know, the only test that kids would have to take is if they're an early entry. Sometimes, and it's not so much a test, it's more of a screening, like if they're a September birthday or something like that, and their parents are wanting to send them to kindergarten earlier.
Right.
I know our offices are working really hard on figuring out how to get kindergarten enrollment going, because that's a need and a want. And they should be able to be pushing out more information soon about how to still get kindergartners enrolled.
And I'll put in another plug for social emotional learning. You can never start that too early, right, as well. And one of the programs Youth First does with early childhood is Owls Pals. And one of the lessons is about learning to use your power words. So a power word would be please and thank you. Those are great lessons to start working on as well. We have another question about education. 2 of my kids have WebEx meetings with their teachers, but one does not. I think that 3rd child would really benefit from it. Any way to encourage that? Are teachers encouraged to do those meetings?
If anybody else wants to answer too, but I'll actually, as a parent, I am working full time as a special ed coordinator. Then I also have 3 kids at home. And so I get to kind of wear both hats each day. I get to, be there as a support for parents and for teachers, but then I'm also there watching my kids. And one of my daughters does have a weekly WebEx. They call it morning meeting on Fridays, and they just do fun stuff. They just talk. Last week, I think they did a scavenger hunt because she was running all over the house, grabbing like the spoon and stuff. But she was excited, and they get to see their friends. My other daughter doesn't have any, and it's not because the teacher does not want to. What we have to remember is that sometimes our teachers don't even have the greatest internet. I myself don't have the greatest internet at my house. I've been relying on my hotspot, which does great. But then when the hotspot runs out, then I'm back to my not so great internet. So their technology is struggling as well. But if you feel like, so it might not be that they don't want to do a WebEx. It might be that they don't have the capability, or, a lot of our teachers are parents as well. And, sometimes the stress of doing a WebEx when you've got little ones running around, but you're trying to give your class attention, it might be too overwhelming for them. So kind of come in with that understanding of what it's like in their household as well. If you do think your child would benefit and the teacher hasn't reached out, email that teacher, ask them, and let them know that kiddo misses them. And if they could, maybe they could schedule a one-on-one WebEx. Maybe they could, maybe if their internet's not great enough, they could call. I know some teachers who are doing that too, because I will say my daughter's that does the WebEx, it's kind of like a very good organized chaos because all the kids want to talk and they don't quite get it yet. They all want to chime in, so people have to mute people. And even though it's cute and it's really fun, I could see someone who, has their own anxieties and their own stress, it would be overwhelming. So, but once again, do not hesitate to reach out to that teacher. And because I know so many of our teachers just have the biggest hearts. And when that news broke that we would not be returning this year, it was heartbreaking. And there was lots and lots of my teachers that I work with, teacher friends like Tara, was just heartbroken. And so they want to connect to the kids. We might just have to get a little more creative.
We have another question. This family has a 5th grader. And the question is, what advice do you have for what my child can do, and this is their term, school-wise, when I'm unavailable? So how can you get a 5th grader engaged with some, I guess, educational activities when the parent is unavailable?
I could probably answer some of that. I know that a lot of teachers are sending out like optional resources or additional resources that aren't necessarily required, but things that are kind of fun to do, but also educational. Teachers have a plethora of resources like that they use in their own classroom that aren't necessarily, just learning the skill, but they're practicing the skill for fun. So the first thing I would do is I would say, reach out to that teacher and ask, is there anything that, any suggestions that you have? And then also I feel like I would say, I know like there's some certain things like where you can like create things. So like you can have them create Google Slides, or you can have them create videos where they're explaining something. Even it depends on what their interests are, but if their interests are sports, they can get on there and explain how to do a certain skill. Just certain things like that, where it's not necessarily straight academic skills, but just more creative type things. I think that's good for kids, just to get into to kind of open their creative mind and keep the juices flowing while they're not at school being creative. So those are a few of my suggestions.
All right. Well, we've answered a number of questions from our Facebook friends, which we very much appreciate. And we've got just a few more minutes. So I thought I would ask each of you to share one word of encouragement that you could for parents. Give it maybe in 30 seconds or less. What kind of encouragement do you want to leave with parents tonight, and make sure they know that they're doing the best that they can, and that's all they need to do? Shall we start with Jamie Below?
So I'm a pediatric psychologist. I'm considered an expert in development and social emotional learning, and I mess up every day. And so a few days ago, my 2-year-old, while I was trying to have fun with my 6 and 9-year-old and do one simple activity, the 2-year-old found a full box of cereal and dumped it all over the inside of our van. Don't ask how this all happened. It was, I don't know. But that was a bad moment for me. And I went kind of to a negative place. So give yourself grace. Maybe lower the bar a little bit for unmet expectations are really mess with your mind and your mental health during this time. So just give yourself grace and know that there's an expert out there who's struggling too.
Thank you for that. And Tiffany, how about you? What word of encouragement do you have for parents?
That you are not alone. So just feel free to reach out to anyone that you feel like can be helpful. You are not alone. It takes a village. That old saying is a true saying. It does. It takes a village, and reach out to your village.
Thank you. Tara Evans, what's your word for the evening?
I would just say that you guys are all doing a great job. I know that we all are messing up every single day, but in 20 years, I feel like our kids are going to be able to look back at this time and remember that it was scary, but we also got to just hang out together. And I didn't get to do this when I was a kid and spend 40 days with my parents, and all my kids are a little bit younger. So those of you that have teenagers may not be as excited about that. But I feel like in 20 years, our kids are going to remember all the cool stuff. Jamie, they're going to remember, your two older ones are going to remember that you did that activity with them, that you took the time to do that. And maybe not so much the Lucky Charms that got spilled on the inside of the van. So just be encouraged that you are doing a good job, and just keep putting your relationship with your child before everything else.
Thank you. Betsy.
I would say just to have fun learning with your kids. I learned the very first day when I was working, I just kind of jumped in, did my work, got on all these WebExes, and it was nuts at my house. I think I even called Tara Evans or text her or something, and I had a breakdown. I was like, what am I doing? How am I going to do this? So what I learned is I went, I sent my husband to Office Depot, and I got a big dry erase board, and I started putting up things for the kids, and so they could see when my schedule was, and they could see when mom had to be on a meeting. And then I would write the things they needed to get done that day. But then I would also write some things that I knew they could do on their own during like my meeting times. So read for 20 minutes, or go outside for recess, so I was learning. And then when I was able to step away from my work for a little bit and do more of that instruction with them, and sometimes, you guys, it's 5 o'clock at night for the parents, who are working. And then sometimes it's 9 o'clock in the morning. It just depends on when we can squeeze that in. But then to have fun with them. One of my daughter was, I joked with her that I had no idea that quadrilaterals were so many things. I said, I did not know this. I didn't know there was a rhombus and a square and a rectangle. And, so she was she was frustrated at one point. And then when we broke down the barriers and we just started having fun and I started engaging with her, she was like laughing and she was having fun with it too. So don't forget that even if you don't know the answers and you're over there Googling what a quadrilateral is, and everything that they are, because not gonna pretend that maybe I didn't do that. Then have fun with them. Let them teach you some, and then be okay to laugh and be silly with them, because just to echo what everyone else has said, that's the stuff they're gonna remember. And even if you have a bad day, the best thing too with kids is they're very forgiving. They typically wake up the next morning and they're ready to go. They're good, clean slate people. They wipe it clean and are ready to have another fun day.
Great. Thank you, Betsy. And Tara Babb.
Well, I will piggyback off of what Betsy said. Mine was just to focus on the positive. And, as you go through your day, maybe at night, just sit down, and if you have to, write down 1 or 2 positive things that happened that day, and then use that to carry on to the next day. Because like she said, the kids, they just remember the positive things in the long run. And so as many positive things that you can squeeze out of your day, the better. And a lot of times me just writing it down helps, and intentionally focusing on it helps me think, okay, well, today wasn't such a bad day. Tomorrow I kind of, after reflecting, I want to do this more, or I don't want to do this as much. And then if I do it the next day, then, I just need to have grace with myself. But focus on the positive is for sure what I would suggest.
Wonderful. So I like the look for the silver linings, and don't forget sleep. You need sleep and your kids need sleep. So unfortunately our time is up, but if you have more questions, please share them in the comments on Facebook, and our friends at Dream Center will follow up with you. If you think this time was worthwhile, please leave us know as well in the comments, and maybe we'll do it again. We have some additional information for you. If you would like to learn more, Youth First has a resource on its website. We're calling it COVID-19 Family Care. So feel free to go to Youth First website and download all kinds of fun activities, focus on social emotional learning, all ages. And there are also some articles that you can read about how to manage your stress and work with your kids as well. And then if you are in need of food, you can go to the Facebook page for Feed Evansville at Feed EVV and learn more about where to find food pantries and also affordable groceries. Also, if you need some help for an errand or delivery of groceries or supplies, simply an encouraging word or prayer, you can request that help at needaneighbor.org. You can also volunteer to assist others during this time of the COVID-19 crisis. So visit the website needaneighbor.org. I want to thank again all of our panelists. You did a wonderful job tonight. Thank you for volunteering your time and expertise and encouraging words. And thank you to everyone who watched us. Have a great rest of your evening.